Welcome to the Mekko Graphics training video. This video demonstrates how to use the Preference Manager to save time when creating charts. The Preference Manager allows you to select fonts, formats, colors, and other time-saving settings that you can use when you create or edit your chart. It's helpful when you're bringing in a chart from an older presentation or using a chart from a coworker's presentation because it allows you to update these charts using your Preference Manager settings. And so if there are edits that you make every time you create a chart, like say font size or chart margins or the placement of the axis title, I encourage you to check out your Preference Manager settings to see if this is something that you can set once and then apply to all charts that you create. This will save you a great deal of time. Let me show you how. From the Mekko Graphics Charts tab in PowerPoint, choose Preference Manager, which opens up the Preference Manager. And you'll see right away that there are three tabs: color palettes or themes, settings, which are generalized settings, and then specific settings for Gantt charts. We're going to start with the second tab, the settings tab, and just give you a quick tour of some of the options. You can choose to have multicolor or no shading charts and patterns or no patterns. Also, you can display your color draw order in the order before or after sorting, by bars, or by segments. You can also choose to display your segment borders or not. And then here, for your axis, you can have horizontal, vertical, or top tick aligned, which means it's sort of pegged to the top of the axis. We're going to choose vertical. And you can choose to display any units or currency for all y-axis labels or just the top one. And then you have options for showing your line, tick marks, and grid lines. For the x-axis, you can draw your x-axis in front or behind any overlapping bars. I'm going to display them in front and turn that off for display in background. And then I have x-axis options as well for my tick marks. For new chart defaults, you can tell Mekko Graphics to automatically use blank series and bar names on the chart. And for place all labels, if you have a lot of small series labels, Mekko Graphics will automatically place them on the chart so you can edit them. You have several options for formatting numbers in your chart. For example, my negative number format, I could choose to have negatives in parentheses. And then I also have decimal and thousand separator options. For fonts, I can choose my default font, which is the font that will be used for the creation of new charts, and I'll choose Century Gothic. You can do the same for Asian fonts. And then for font size, I like to have all my fonts at the same size, so I have fixed size checked, and then I'm going to nudge them up to 14 because I don't create charts with a ton of labels, and so I want my labels to just be a little bit bigger. For my chart margins, if you're constantly changing the margins in your chart, you might want to set some defaults here, as well as default layout for your margins. And we'll just click OK to close the Preference Manager. So now we're going to open an existing chart and apply those settings that we just set in the Preference Manager to this chart. So I'm just going to double click the chart, and then from the Edit Chart ribbon, I'm going to choose Apply PM Settings or Apply Preference Manager Settings. And you'll see that when I click that button, the changes that I made in the Preference Manager are applied to this chart. My axis title has changed from horizontal to vertical, and my font typeface changed from Calibri to Century Gothic. And we'll go ahead and click off this chart. And we're going to open the Preference Manager one more time because I'd like to talk a little bit about color. So we click the Preference Manager button, and you'll see here there's a list of all of the standard palettes. These come installed when you install our software, so these are preloaded. And then you also have the ability to create custom palettes. The dot on the left indicates that Parade 6 is the default palette. And I'm just clicking the Edit button, and I can edit this palette. Here I can add a color to the palette. So I'm clicking that right arrow, and then I can also adjust the position in the list of where that color appears by clicking those up and down arrows. I can do the same for my lines. In the Colors tab, I have all sorts of control over what color different elements are, and I'll change the bar chart color here. And then I have options as well for Gantt charts. I can also create a new color. I can click the New button, and I'm prompted to name it. I'll name it Olive. And then I can click anywhere on this color wheel, or I can directly type in a hex or an RGB value. And then I can click OK. And I can click the right arrow button to add that color to my draw order. Clicking the up and down arrows to move that color up and down where I'd like it to be. And then I'm prompted to name my new palette or theme. So I'm just going to name it Custom and Customized Palette, and I will go ahead and save that. You'll see that the customized palette that I created is now in the grid in the Custom section as a palette that is available to me. And if I want to show that palette in the user interface for Mekko Graphics, I will just check that checkbox called Show in UI so that it's available. And if I want that palette to be my default palette, I can click that palette and choose Set as Default, and you'll see that in the default column, the dot appears now for that palette. You can check this checkbox if you create decks using lots of different themes and just want Mekko Graphics to use colors from whatever theme you're using. Or you can use this button, which will create a palette in your Preference Manager that uses the colors from your active PowerPoint theme. So you can see here, it just created a palette in Insight Software using my active PowerPoint theme, which is also Insight Software. So let's jump over to the Gantt Charts tab, and I just want to give you a quick tour of what that looks like. You can see you have lots of control over different Gantt defaults. And most of these are self-explanatory. If we go through them, you can, for example, I will change the font size, the default font size of my labels for my Gantt. I can also change the month that is defined as the first month of Q1 and margins and things like that. I can also go to the Elements tab for an even more granular control over the different elements in the Gantt chart, and I have the ability to change the pattern as well as the weight of different elements in my Gantt chart. So here I'll just make my process border super thick to 4 point, and think I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to jump back to the Settings tab because I just want to show you the Line Styles sub-tab here, which allows me to have, again, super granular control over the weight and pattern of all the different kinds of lines that can appear in my Mekko Graphics charts. So I can make different patterns here, dashed, dotted, things like that for all different elements in this chart. And then before we exit the Preference Manager, I'm just going to do one more thing, and I'm going to jump over to this Color Palettes tab and just show you that you have the ability to save any theme or palette as an XML file. So you can save this as an XML, anything that's highlighted. So I'm highlighting the Insight Software palette, and I can save it as an XML. It will take the same name as the palette name. And then if I want to share that palette with other people in my organization, I can do that. And if I want to import, I would use Add from File. So we'll go ahead and close the Preference Manager. Now, how do I update my charts in a deck without actually opening up Mekko Graphics? So here I have a deck, and it has a Mekko, it has a line chart, and it has a Gantt chart. Now, there's two ways to update my charts without opening Mekko Graphics. I can right-click on the chart object, and from the context menu, choose Update Chart. That does exactly the same thing as what Apply Preference Manager settings would do inside Mekko Graphics. If I have a lot of charts in a deck and I want to update all of them, I choose Update All Charts from the ribbon, and it will ask for a confirmation, and if I click Continue, it will go through all the charts in my deck one by one and update them to the new settings. And as you can see, it updated the color here, it updated my line thickness, my y-axis orientation, and my Gantt chart. Thanks for attending this training video. For more information about Mekko Graphics, please visit our website at mekkographics.com.